All the believers were together, and they had everything in common. You ever met somebody, maybe, let's see, what's something that I like to do? I love building sandcastles. If I'm walking along a beach, and I don't mean just like little cups full of sand, you know, those little ones with the flags made out of seaweed and the stick, you know. I'm not talking about those kind of sandcastles. I like to have a huge mound of sand and spend the whole day carving it with serpents wrapped around castles, you know, or pyramids and like spheres, you know, lining the outside. And I just love building sandcastles. I love it. When I see somebody else making an equivalent sandcastle, or better, normally they're better, I love to go up and talk to them. We've got something in common. It's like, I'm part of the sandcastle family. I'm part of the club. And same thing with these guys. What did they have in common? Jesus. The other day, Brendan and I drove underneath a bridge, an overpass, and there was these people with this big, huge sign. All it said was, Jesus. And we were like, beep, beep, yeah. That must be fun being up there on that bridge, because you see, there goes another one of us. You know, there's just another piece of my family. Real exhilarating. So these guys had everything in common. They sold their possessions. Ooh, now that's a little bit different than us right now. Sold their possessions and goods, and they gave it to anyone that had need. Very committed. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. This would be an exciting time, would it not? You imagine being there in that room, not just rooms, now it began to be houses, and that's the whole side of the city. And there's people saying, get out of here, and other people going, these guys are cool, they're fun to be around. They started being very different than the rest of the world, and the message from there erupted across the face of the globe. That's why today we have a Christian church right here. Not just in Israel, not just in Jerusalem. This exhilarating time happened after the life of Jesus, but the next really exciting time will happen before he shows up again. Indeed, it has begun. Why can't we see it? Sometimes we'll hear a story from like Africa. I'm going to read you one here in a minute. There's stuff that is like this that's happening. But why should it just be for them? We're a group of people. We know God. Why can't we be that way? There's a couple of things holding us back, but we're going to see if we can dissolve those today so that we can begin to be weirdos for God. Really different people. If weirdo means something bad to you, I'm sorry. Basically, we're blind, we're lukewarm, we're average Americans. God's church, though, is called to be different from the world. Very different. How different? In John 15:18 it says, if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That's why the world hates you. So there's going to be members of our society who hate you because of how different you are, how much you love God. Are you willing to accept that challenge? It's not that scary to have somebody hate you because God is on our side. And remember, it's not you who they hate, it's God. This is sad, but it's true. So where is our passion? Why can't we understand the spiritual blindness? We see shades of gray everywhere. We're not sure, is this God's will? Is it his will for me to talk to this guy? I don't know. It's kind of gray for me. Is it okay to be that way? I don't know. It's kind of gray for me. Do you understand that? Did the Bible say anything about that? Ralph Neighbor is a pastor. He's a Christian pastor. And he made a visit to the Ivory Coast. I think Brenda got an email from Daryl Penny. Thanks, Daryl. Your email made it into the sermon. She emailed it to me, and I said, well, I'm like, yeah. So now I'm going to read it. He visited a guy named Dion, I don't know his last name, and he is a cell church leader in Africa. Cell church is basically a church that meets just in a home. Like you get together with 5 or 6 other people or with 12 other people on a regular basis, and that is where you attend church. You study the Bible together, you learn about God together, you love each other, break bread, just like the apostles did. Dion had over 100,000 incels in Abidjan and desired to invade the demon-infested city of Bouak in the center of the Ivory Coast. That's a country on the coast of Africa, kind of facing south off the big African lobe thing on that side. Hundreds of cell church members moved lock, stock, and barrel to plant cells there, and the seeds planted grew. It was harvest time. Dion asked 1,000 of his cell church leaders to accompany him to Bouak to counsel the converts. They booked the largest soccer stadium available. Soccer stadiums are big, especially in other countries. Bouak is the center for many cults, including the Rosicrucians. A death threat was sent from these cults warning Dion to stay away. He called the leaders in Abidjan together and told them about this and offered to release any who are afraid. So if you're worried about this death threat, I'm not going to make you go. If you want to go, let's go. The morning of their journey, they headed up a 2-lane road through the jungle to Bouak. All the buses and vans rentable were packed with cell leaders driving in procession for the long journey. Dion was in the last van at the end of the line. Halfway up, a lumber truck veered, I imagine demonically veered, influenced, into an oncoming bus with 20 cell members, shearing the cab from the frame. It rolled down a steep embankment and all the passengers were dead or dying. Dion finally arrived. He slid down the side of the hill where the bodies were stretched out. He wept and prayed over the scene, gave orders for the care of the corpses, and returned to his journey. He went directly to the stadium and preached to a crowd of thousands. Several thousand were converted. That sound familiar? And counseled by the cell leaders. An American pastor from Houston had been riding with Dion. After the service, he said, "Dion, I am amazed at you." So this is an American pastor, one of us, from this North American family. He's over there watching this stuff happen. "Dion, I'm amazed at you. I was so shattered by those deaths that I could not have preached tonight." Dion poked his finger in the American preacher's chest. By the way, Americans don't like having fingers pointed at them. That's why the president holds his hand like this when he gives an address to America. He goes, "Today we're going to change this place." And he doesn't go like that because then people like ignore him and stuff. Dion poked his finger in the American preacher's chest. "Oh, no. That's the trouble with you American Christians. You think there's good and evil like black and white, but you have many shades of gray between them. Here in the Ivory Coast, there is no gray, only God and the devil. I'm a general in the army of God. I sent my soldiers into battle. The enemy took out 20 of my army, but we have brought salvation to thousands of Satan's army tonight. Don't you see we're in battle?" In Dion's compound in Abidjan, there's a building with several floors. The ground floor is set apart to deliver new believers who come to Christ after a lifetime of being demon-possessed. That ministry operates 24 hours a day. When I went to preach for Dion in a 40,000-seat stadium, he said, "Do you want to see the demon-possessed in the audience?" Weird question. He asked all the believers to come down from the stands and dance before the Lord. They formed a serpentine line and sang, "Jesus is higher, Satan is under, Jesus is higher." And while they're doing this, in the nearly empty stands, the demon-possessed began to writhe and scream in pain as demons manifested. It's also pushed on by the prayers of the saints. Teams of 6 ran to pick them up and carry them horizontally to the deliverance tents where they were ministered to. Strange story, but it's a powerful ministry that is happening right now as we speak in Africa. So how do you see with these new eyes? How do we have this vision of the spiritual warfare around us, which is one of the reasons that we are driven to pray, driven to intercede for people who we know are in danger, who aren't praying for themselves? Intercessory prayer. This is why we have prayer teams at 24/7.